We are the CoDesign for Humanity group. Our group consists of 6 members: Darren, Jeannie, Lee, Monique, Lanae, and Barusha. This project is an interactive and participative co-design process, which is a powerful tool and often leads to greater spatial solutions. Role players which participate in this process are empowered and they take ownership of the design decisions. The studio is led by Dr. Karen Kombrink and Jason Oberholzer.
We defined key terms which led to a better understanding of what is required from us during this quarter. We dealt with the concept of authorship, meaning being the creator of a piece of work. Being in an authorship position in terms of architecture means we take charge and initiate the design proposal. Co-design refers to the collaborative process of sharing knowledge, and design activism recognizes the potential and capacity of design as a tool for social and environmental progress. We were introduced to the term gatekeeping, which is the act of controlling access to goods, services, action, or information. We were dealt with the concept of gatekeeping during conflict experienced with an NGO. During this quarter, we followed the concept of humanitarian architecture and the reality of informal settlements. Spatial agency presents new ways of looking at how buildings and spaces could be produced. It moves away from traditional architecture and proposes a more expansive field of opportunities in which architects and other disciplines can operate. It suggests other ways of doing architecture. Tenureship is the legal right to occupy and own land. During the studio, we dealt with a spectrum of architectural projects ranging from no tenure to full tenureship. We dealt with terms such as transience and investigated the UN's wash rights.
We initiated our co-design process by redefining our architectural approach, shifting from indirect user involvement to direct engagement. In other words, we transitioned from merely creating designs for people to actively collaborating with them throughout the design process. This shift reflects the contemporary trend of empowering individuals and placing them at the center of the design experience. Designers in co-design for social innovation can play multiple roles: main agents driving creativity and innovation, intermediaries facilitating stakeholder communication, advocates for participatory processes and design thinking, and futurists considering future stakeholders and scenarios. They contribute expertise, foster collaboration, promote inclusivity, and envision solutions for present and future societal challenges.
According to the United Nations, informal settlements are caused by a range of interrelated factors, including population growth and rural-urban migration. The illustration above, which depicts the increasing growth of informal settlements worldwide, despite governments, local authorities, and international institutions' efforts to curb their expansion. The United Nations tents are used as temporary solutions to relieve disasters but often lacks cultural identity. The solution appears to have an alien-like presence within the local communities and does not serve beyond basic human rights.
Due to legislation and laws during the apartheid era, South Africans were reduced to allocated areas based on ethnicity. The apartheid regime fostered inequality, which in turn led to poverty, which rendered formal housing unaffordable and resulting in informal settlements in unclaimed areas. The threat of informal settlements to privileged property rights, as well as their right to the security, health, and well-being of the privileged classes, has justified a socially insensitive intervention through relocation associated with the enforcement of law and order.
Highlighting the work of previous years, the 2022 group focused on 3 main areas: sports and economics, water, and education. We aim to facilitate collaboration as well as they did to address some of these issues in our intervention.
During quarter 1, we conducted formal questionnaires, identified common issues and needs finding in informal settlements. The outcomes were addressed in the following projects of human dignity and the Black Water Crisis. We made the assumption that the overarching themes we addressed during quarter 1 would be re-examined and similar issues would be taken into consideration.
In order to navigate this concept effectively, it is crucial to grasp the essence of gatekeeping and know how to address it. Gatekeepers have the power to impact the progress and results of research by causing frustration for the researcher, withholding information, restricting the researcher's access to relevant resources, determining the sample, and shaping the way respondents engage with the researcher. The act of gatekeeping in this instance intertwines with the NGO and the community, presenting them as a single entity, with the NGO assuming the role of both the voice and the mediator in the public eye. We recognize the importance of the NGO's role as a facilitator and supporter of the community, rather than assuming the position of the sole voice. It is crucial to empower the community, allowing their ideas to flourish while offering guidance and input without inadvertently suppressing their voices.
We should examine how we can utilize existing shared spaces as structural devices to create spatial platforms that facilitate the exchange of knowledge. This exchange is essential for the development of a community that effectively addresses socioeconomic issues, ensures the provision of basic services, and promotes the overall social well-being of its members.
In order to back up our approach academically, we analyzed 4 works of literature, namely the 3P process by Yankee Lee, Ornstein's Ladder, Spatial Agency, and the Guide to Community-Led Placemaking by the CoDesign Studio. Ornstein's Ladder of citizen participation provides a lens in which we were able to classify the actions applied in order to engage with the community. These classifications fall underneath degrees of citizen power, tokenism, and lastly, non-participation.
Architects often prioritize designing for the affluent top 1% who can afford those services, neglecting the needs of the majority of the population. However, it is crucial to acknowledge this trend since architecture fundamentally aims to shape the physical environment for everyone, not just the privileged few. It should cater for the 99% and the rest of the population, recognizing their importance and addressing their requests.
The CoDesign Studio proposed the people, process, and place model, which involves mobilizing and activating local citizens for community-led placemaking, activating local places and measured outcomes, and facilitating an enabling environment for local leaders. This could be linked to a study conducted by Vajkalio, where he examined the incorporation of contextual information in the process of design gathering. In order to enhance co-design practices, it is crucial to investigate the roles and facilitation involved, including identifying the designer and identifying desirable design partners.
Architectural projects range from having a status of being very temporary without tenure to projects with full tenure and being permanent. These project scopes show the specific subject matter they fall under. We initially worked within the activism sphere, yet we ended up working in the humanitarian realm. This approach to architecture has far-reaching implications. It not only leaves a lasting legacy by empowering locals with confidence and skills to lead in the long term, but also promotes participatory design and community-led initiatives. By involving citizens in shaping their neighborhoods, it fosters a sense of ownership and unity around a common goal. Additionally, it encourages the sharing of skills, knowledge, and resources within the community. Overall, this approach transforms architecture into a catalyst for positive change, bringing together people, empowering communities, and creating vibrant and sustainable environments.
We adopted the following design strategy. Initially temporary, the structure gradually integrates as a lasting element in the community. This encourages opportunities for adaptation and creating a sense of belonging. Creative utilization of local materials is essential to explore new possibilities. Lastly, providing an assembly manual guides the community in constructing the modular structure. Therefore, our role as the architect changed from design facilitators to primary author.
Reviewing literature on the current discourse surrounding the theme of co-design, we made assumptions on where pushback may occur, as well as where opportunities for interaction can be discovered. Successful community encounters were arranged, and we reassessed and analyzed our findings at each one of these interactions.
Woodlande Village is situated in the east of Pretoria in Maruleta Park. The settlement is surrounded by some of Pretoria's most affluent estates, and the contrast between the living conditions are very evident. Taking a closer look at Pretoria East and situating the informal settlement within the context was important to understand. We dealt with gatekeeping through firstly identifying where and how it took place throughout the project. We recognize that the NGO, community, and the Unit for Urban Citizenship all have the same end goal in mind, but we are aware that the methods and processes to reach those goals might differ. We decided to step away from the direct involvement in the community and take on the project amongst the group. We are not disregarding the input from the community and NGO by redirecting the course of the project, but rather building on what we already know and sharing ideas through hybrid methods. This is an illustration of how the roles changed for each of the different parties involved. It is quite clear that this was a fluid process and roles changed continuously.
Our involvement as architects started with a focus on direct user engagement, where we took on the role of an architect facilitator to incorporate community participation. However, during the co-design process, we found ourselves transitioning back to our traditional role as the primary author, highlighting the dynamic nature of our architectural approach as reflected in our matrix.
The site visit with the community leaders was informative and gave us perspective on what they deemed important. These issues included the Blackwater crisis, the newly established vegetable garden, and the soccer field.
We used 3 categories for our participatory design tools, namely visual, games, and models. We used these tools to encourage engagement and co-design in our workshops. They served as a bridge between the creative process and the reality of the context. To communicate with the community members at large, we designed posters. These were to be pinned up on the water tanks and or other integral political nodes as identified in Quarter 1. We used a curated list of tools to facilitate communication, costing, design, building, and presenting, some of which can be seen in the video on the right.
Yankee Lee proposed a 3P process for the design participation, which illustrates 3 stages for the facilitation of co-design, all of which see the role of the designer and user interchange between facilitator and author of the final design project.
The first site visit with the community leaders was an introduction to the project and ensuring that there is a mutual understanding between us and the leaders. The leaders informed us that there is an existing project that they are working on with the NGO, and we discussed the different options on how our studio could be involved in that project. During the first formal meeting with the community leaders and the NGO, we encountered the first case of gatekeeping. The community's voice was trumped by the NGO, and the NGO took on the role as representative. The ideas and conclusions we drew from the first meeting on site was directly contrasted by the voice of the NGO representative.
During workshop 1, we engaged with the community of Woodlande Village. We set out papers and pens, explained our process, encouraged design ideas to be shared, and invited men, women, and children to participate and partake in the co-design process. We made use of P1 in Yankee Lee's 3P process, which included investigating an initial rough design proposal, and thereafter an interactive drawing workshop, engaging what the community members present liked and disliked about the initial designs and what was feasible.
The community members demonstrated desired structures and reiterated the design further as digital proposed structures.
During workshop 2, we remained at P1 of Yankee Lee's 3P process and continued to foster partnership through the preference stage. We set up a gazebo and established a base for collaboration. This stage included the addition of engaging visual participatory design tools, where community members were given the opportunity to indicate designs they did and did not like, what issues plagued them most, and suggestions on where solutions could be implemented and how.
During this phase, a market style was chosen and iterated into a preferred structure. This was initiated by the community members by use of a collaborative process. Collectively, we identified the need for a multi-use structure responding to the issues at hand, a need for a market, schooling, and shading device.
Based on the literature, we identified gatekeeping in this project when there was a strong divide between what we heard from the community and what we got told by the NGO. The intention of the workshop shifted from investigating tools within the community to understanding and refining the design of the structure. This workshop led to the conclusion that there will have to be rigorous designs produced by the group to come up with the best informed design to suit the intention behind it. We redirected our focus on a co-design project amongst the 6 of us and realized that we are designing for multiple potential sites. The final design to conclude Workshop 3 was a modular structure that is easily portable and feasible. The structure responds to the site it was intended for and starts exploring key elements of the design that will be investigated further.
By strategically utilizing several Instagram posts, we successfully created awareness and empowered our community to come together and take action. This was further supplemented with posters as a communication tool for our design brief and desired outcomes.
Various ideas were generated through our workshops, focusing on modularity, portability, and feasibility, building on from what was established in our community workshops. These ideas were then taken into the following workshops with the larger Bokunda community.
The outcome of our group workshop was 7 concepts, which were then presented to the Bokunda students in the atrium.
The ideas were then posed to the Bokunda community. They were given the opportunity to actively engage with our designs and critique them as well as generate their own solutions. These are some of the interactions from the first workshop we held at Bokunda, where we captured the attention of students and lecturers who engaged critically in the design process. The engagement and participation was successful. Everyone contributed with valuable design inputs and ideas. Therefore, the workshop proved to be a successful collaborative participatory process. Our endeavors focused on comprehending the requirements and adjusting our design to enable collaborative design. Throughout this journey, we have embraced several essential ideas, such as tapping into and utilizing the skills of the community, creating designs that can be easily dismantled, ensuring versatility in design functionality, taking into account the articulation and assembly of the design, providing opportunities for personalization, and effectively communicating the design to stakeholders.
Reflecting on our literature and the outcomes of our research, we identified 3 main gaps in the discourse. Firstly, shelter. Spatial agency highlights that over the years, much architectural ingenuity has been devoted to the design of emergency housing shelters. So we then asked, what happens after the tents go up? Secondly, dignity. Spatial agency suggests that being able to construct their own homes restores a sense of dignity to refugees. So, how do we facilitate the redevelopment of dignity through our design? And then finally, appropriation. Spatial agency indicates that many existing solutions sideline the expertise of the community. So we aim to understand what opportunities lie in harnessing the skills and cultural needs of the community and allowing them to take ownership of the intervention through these opportunities.
Understanding architecture as a social practice and engaging with the literature of spatial agency, our group iterated our design proposal to fit a broader scheme. This iteration derived from the concept of empowering people by providing them with the tools to satisfy their basic human needs. Therefore, the multifunctional structure serves as a proposal to informal settlements across Africa and eventually worldwide.
This shift in perspective allowed us to refocus the design criteria towards a more humanitarian design solution. Thus, a more direct design criteria was set following the various workshops undertaken, and the design process generated from this prompted the introduction of new stakeholders.
After the emergence of this new iteration focusing on humanitarian architecture, we reached out to Raw Modular and York Timbers to seek guidance on the proposed concept generated through collaboration, interactions with Woodlande Village, Bokunda, and amongst ourselves to find a suitable means to construct the final prototype. We also reached out to UNICEF as a stakeholder who we hope can catalyze the importance of this intervention.
To set a precedent, we examined the innovative design of Gartner Fuglen Architecture's small shelter for ice fishing, aptly named Noun 1, Unavailability. This remarkable structure features a collapsible timber frame that facilitates convenient relocation and storage, allowing it to be effortlessly assembled by just 1 or 2 individuals within a mere 30 seconds.
Informed by interactions with Skulk from York Timbers, we looked at the Wiki House. This project is a form of open source architecture that can be built from design to completion by a small group of people, following an IKEA-like assembly concept. This style of architecture inspired the articulation of our intervention.
With the precedents in mind, our multifunctional structure was iterated further and different assembly methods were considered for modularity. Our next workshop was at Raw Modular to refine our design proposal and make it CNC friendly with the guidance of professional Piet van Straten. We position ourselves with the delegated power framework with conversation as a communication tool. This showcases our thought process as we collaborated to iterate on the final prototype set of components. Working with plywood and a CNC machine posed challenges as we had to carefully consider and design each individual part as an integral piece of the larger whole, much like designing individual puzzle pieces for a complete puzzle set. As a test, we laser cut a smaller 1:5 scaled prototype from cardboard to assess the assembly joints. By doing so, we realized what had to be changed in our initial design. The 1:5 models, individuals, pieces, did fit together, except for a few that had to be redesigned. We then recut 2 models at a scale 1:10 to refine the design flaws and improve structural soundness.
Planning our design, our subsequent step involved the meticulous assembly of the CNC cut prototype. This critical phase occurred both at Raw Modular and within our Brokinder atrium.
This is the assembly process captured at Brokinder. We assembled the structure in the atrium and ensured that it could be assembled with minimal tools and a small team. Our final part of the co-design process was constructing the prototype, and it is still located in the atrium of our building.
The final design of the structure presents a solution for facilitating a more humanitarian approach to architecture within the sensitive confines of disaster-hit areas. The model allows a variety of use cases fit for appropriation, with the possibility of acting as one market space or as a learning space for seating.
The building process consists of 2 phases. The first phase includes the CNC process and the assembly of the different parts to create the individual members for the structure. This process takes approximately 5 hours. The second phase is the assembly of the actual structure using the ready-made parts. The entire structure can be constructed in 1 hour. We assembled the structure at Raw Modular to ensure all parts fit and disassembled within 30 minutes.
Post-CNC machining, the tools needed to assemble this prototype are a mallet and an electric drill. An assembly manual will be provided with the kit of parts as a step-by-step guide to how the structure should be assembled. The structure can therefore make its place alongside existing refugee camps, where it is able to provide the framework necessary to facilitate livelihood while the refugees continue to live in a state of purgatory. They'll be able to temporarily sustain themselves and educate the youth, much like the needs identified at Woodlande Village. Now let's talk money. The total cost of the prototype, taking into account a few wasted pieces resulting from the prototyping process, amounted to 14,700 Rand. The material expenses included 12 boards of plywood, 240mm seating screws, and a packet of dowels, totaling 9,600 Rand. The total cost of the CNC machine amounted to 4,500 Rand, and the additional expenses for machining, planer, and sandpaper machines added up to an extra 600 Rand.
After the construction of the prototype, it is important to reflect on its limitations. Access to a CNC machine might be limited in some areas if the prototype isn't shipped as a whole and open source design is followed. The structure's weight could also be improved as the plywood panels are quite heavy. And finally, design refinement would be important to be able to produce these structures on a large scale.
Our presentation marks the end of a phase, but our co-design journey remains ongoing. We will utilize open source design platforms to share our approach and encourage others to contribute. Demonstrating the practical outcomes of our collective design efforts, we empower the Woodlande Village community to see their ideas materialize. Moreover, we aim to collaborate with organizations such as UN Habitat, acting as spatial agents for humanitarian and disaster relief architecture, prioritizing sustainable solutions that support livelihoods. Our commitment extends beyond this presentation as we strive to create a lasting impact, fostering resilience and sustainability in the lives of those in need.